Hi there, Jim. How's
Hi.
it going?
Very good. I'm looking forward to this unique Periscope event for TES.
Well, yeah, definitely. Let's just set the scene. We're in the hub here at TES, at TES HQ here in Holborn, London. I'm Ben Stroud, the social media manager. Although it's not about me at all. It's about this gentleman here, Jim Knight, Lord Jim Knight. For those who don't know about you, could you give kind of a brief overview?
Sure.
Of,
My day job here is Chief Education Advisor at TES. So, to some extent, that's a external affairs ambassadorial role, just looking after the key external relations that we have across the range of businesses that we have around helping teachers get jobs, helping teachers in the classroom through resources, helping teachers get development through training and CPD. Then I'm a member of the House of Lords, where I specialise in talking about education, about digital, about rural affairs, and a little bit about employment. I chair the foundation, the Tinder Foundation, that runs all the UK Online Centres, the main digital inclusion delivery organisation in the UK. And then finally I chair a little startup that's diagnosing malaria with iPhones, but we won't dwell too much on that in the context of this conversation. And then I was once a schools minister, which is what a lot of people think of me for in the education world.
So fairly busy then. You're fairly.
I'm
busy.
fairly busy, but it's nice to sit and have a nice cup of TES's finest tea and have a chat to you, Ben.
Great. So we're going to be talking about edtech today. How teachers can use it,
Yeah.
how you've seen edtech being used in the classroom. So to start off, what drew you to the field of kind of edtech?
Well, so I was appointed schools minister by Tony Blair about 9 years ago, and one of the bits of the portfolio that I inherited was the use of technology. And at the time, we had a whole agency, Bector, looking after it. We were giving money through the Harnessing Technology grant to schools. We had interactive whiteboards rolling out the door all day and every day, pretty much. So I became interested in how that was being used. I remember one of the first visits was to a primary school in the Wolverhampton area with a guy called Dave Wiley, and he showed me how they were using essentially little Windows mobile devices for things like animating science experiments, showing me how kids with autism were particularly attracted to the sort of more focused learning that they could do through a device that was easier than in a social setting in that circumstance. And I could see all the different possibilities for how we use this essentially consumer technology for education. And I'd always been kind of interested in technology and IT in my previous roles before I was a politician. And so to some extent it was natural territory, and I've followed it ever since.
Okay, so you saw the good work that was happening kind of in that field with regards to kind of SEN and children and adults to a certain extent with autism.
Yeah, I mean less so with adults because I didn't have a responsibility around that, but
Sure.
I became really happy to some extent to be an evangelist for it. I would go and speak at the Bet Show every year and open that each year, trying to find a different a different angle on it, but trying to push things a bit further each time. One speech, for example, was about how we might use technology to sharpen the home-school relationship with real-time reporting, and highlighting, I think, work that was being done at a school I'm still in touch with, Shirelands Collegiate Academy in Smethwick in the West Midlands, who are doing some really good work. So there's a whole range of different ways in which I think technology as a tool can enhance things. There are downsides, but I remain positive about the potential of the tool.
Okay, well, you talked about some of the downsides, but let's talk about what really excites you about edtech at the moment.
In the end, what excites me is when it really helps teachers. It's easy to forget that teaching is a fundamentally human business, and what we can't do is roboticize teaching. So there's a limit to what data can do for personalization, but where it is done effectively and well, I think there's something very exciting about what we can do there. I love the magnification of the individual teacher that we get through the TES resources platform, where people are sharing their stuff that they find useful is then being downloaded millions of times all around the world, saving teachers around the world a huge amount of time. So there are exciting applications for making teachers' lives easier and more efficient. I get very frustrated when I see teachers still having to mark books and how ridiculously inefficient that is. In some cases, even still having to do a register by hand rather than that being something that they can do through technology straight into the MIS. So there's a big efficiency argument for it. Teachers' time is really precious. I think there is a personalisation thing, which still to some extent hasn't been realised, and that has to be blended around what teachers do and what they do online. And then there's this co-creation thing, which is starting to happen, where we can start to connect learners. I've got a friend, Mina, who from an office in Redbridge in North London is getting teachers successfully teaching classes of 30 in Montevideo by video conference.
Wow.
So the notion now that we can amplify teachers globally, and what that is doing is also delivering really good CPD to the teachers in Uruguay at the same time. All of that's just so exciting, and allows us to redefine what we do.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that we've just had a kind of a question from Periscope at P Sigris kind of asked, do you think that kind of edtech, technology and education teachers, do you think teachers and technology, do you think it's a natural fit?
And thank you, Peter, for the question. I think it's as natural a fit as anything else, and maybe more so than some things. But there's a related question about what your vision for education is. So, I'm of the opinion that we focus too much on knowledge acquisition and not enough on knowledge creation within our schooling system at the moment. But knowledge acquisition is about the communication of information, of knowledge, a lot of which is readily available through technology, and well used, that can be a huge aid to teachers. We are living in the knowledge economy. That's the reality that teachers and learners have outside of school, and it is natural that should now be reflected inside school. When you move to knowledge creation, particularly collaborative knowledge creation, the ability to work on things simultaneously, even if you're not in the same room, the ability to share a richness of media, not just text, is something that only technology can do, and that too makes, I think, technology a natural thing for teachers, and by which I mean connected technology. There are those that would kind of say the old technology of books and paper and pens and little desks in large halls for assessment purposes works perfectly well, and there's no reason to disrupt it. I listen with respect to that argument, but in the end I think, why should printed textbooks provide structure and etc., and can be tailored towards a jurisdiction and towards a curriculum, but they go out of date really quickly and they're very expensive. And we can create dynamic textbooks effectively using digital, which I think just steal a march on that. Why wouldn't we? I think that's a good fit.
Oh, excellent. I mean, we've kind of talked a lot about the advantages of it. What do you think at the moment are kind of the biggest drawbacks of edtech, or what do you think the current kind of limitations are?
I think there are massive drawbacks where we teach to the tech, as someone said I think, in something I read recently. So if we are led by the technology itself rather than by teaching, then we make a mistake. It only has real value when the pedagogy is modified or redefined as a result of what you can then do with the tool, if you think it's worth doing. And it's not always worth doing. There's then obvious worries around, if these are amazingly powerful devices, but they're also very distracting. Now, it might be that we just need to learn to turn on the do not disturb function, and then we can turn off the notifications when we get into school, and then we can still use these powerful computers for research and for collaboration, but not be distracted by social media. And there's the negative uses of them for cyberbullying and so on. There's a whole world of pain that teachers are having to manage around the downsides. But I would have to say, I was at school a long time ago. We had calculators that we wrote rude words on. We had slide rules that we beat each other up with. We had pens that we wrote rude things about each other in the loo walls. And that didn't mean that we banned any of those things. So I'm at the sort of more liberal end of how we should use them, but they should be part of behavioural policies and make sure that we use them well. And then there are those worries that people have about mindfulness to some extent, about solitude, about, there's a resilience that we all need, which is about taking time, reflecting, absorbing everything, having a moment's sort of peace to think and properly digest stuff, to be able to concentrate. And that's without technology, and there has to be space for that. And we have to learn the habits in school about when it's good to be online and when it's good to be offline, when it's good to focus on each other and build our empathy, and when it's good to use a tool.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you wrote a really interesting article on tes.com's on the news site. That was up on Sunday, I believe.
Yeah.
And you linked to a couple of also kind of very interesting articles in the New York Times. One was in the New York Times, and I think one was in the Atlantic, I believe.
Yep.
About smartphones in the classroom, essentially.
Yeah.
I think you went to visit a school. Was it last week? Was it Loudoun or Loudoun?
A school district in Virginia, the Loudoun district, where they had. Interestingly, I'd sat in on a physics class that was being taught over Skype from a local university. This was a high school class where they were getting university credits for completing that course, delivered over Skype. That was interesting, innovative use of tech to scale subject specialism. At a time at the moment where a fair number of schools are struggling to recruit maths teachers, for example. It's interesting to explore the potential of being able to use technology to bring subject specialism into the classroom, alongside someone who's good at classroom management and coaching learning, being in the class. We could experiment a little bit more about how we solve some of our problems thanks to technology. But that was an interesting thing I saw at Loudoun. But we also had a discussion there about the appropriate use of mobiles. And in that case, they do allow them, but they're very conscious about a behaviour policy about how they're used. And they're when you're asked to use them, you're asked to use them, and when you're told that you shouldn't, you put them away.
That's very good. Good classroom management, isn't it? Ultimately.
Yeah, it's kind of straightforward from the outside.
Definitely. Everything looks straight. Everything kind of seems to look straightforward from the outside, and but as we know with teaching, everything's a lot harder than that. So a lot of people are talking. A lot of people have been talking for a while about flipped learning.
Yep.
And about how there are kind of benefits, the benefits of flipped learning for discussions in class. But then there have been kind of a few dissenting voices with regards to how flipped learning affects kind of slightly more introverted pupils.
Yeah.
If they're in a class where there may be kind of an air of constant collaboration, someone slightly quieter.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this? Where do you stand?
That was also one of the articles that was I linked to in the article I wrote at the weekend, and I think it's interesting, this notion about how well we serve introverts. And there is an extent to which it feels like we live in an extrovert's world.
Yeah.
And we need to look after people who have different. We need to look after everyone and their different learning styles. And differentiation is obviously a core skill around teaching, and that's about different abilities, but it's also about different needs, different styles. So. I think I'm a fan of flipped learning. Aaron Sands and John Bergman, two Colorado chemistry teachers who were the sort of pioneers of it some time ago, friends of mine, and I'm hoping to bring them over in the new year to do a conference that will then run as an online CPD course as well, where we'll also then link to a study that will be published by the Education Endowment Fund of flipped learning that was carried out in Smethwick around the Shylans Academy and with primary and secondary, and we'll be able to learn from what works about that. But it seems fairly obvious to me that if you can successfully film to record the instructional content of a lesson and set that as homework, perhaps do some formative assessment to see how well young people are absorbing the learning that they get from video, and then have the classroom time so that the teacher can focus on those that are struggling with the learning, have engaging application of the learning in group collaborative work. Those sorts of things seem fairly obvious that they ought to work. As ever, you've got to have the professional development so that teachers are comfortable with embracing the new pedagogy.
Definitely. With regards to bringing edtech into the classroom, a lot of people will, a lot of teachers watching this will be kind of looking to maybe bring some of it into their classroom for the first time. What would be your advice? Where would be a good place to start for them?
Well, I'm not a teacher, so I'm probably, in some ways, the wrong person to ask. But I can give some thoughts based on what I've seen from others.
Oh, please do.
And I think, the ability to do what you're doing now, to film, I think is very interesting. It's something that young people are getting more used to doing. You can build up portfolios of evidence using still photography, using your phones, using video, using your phones. And that notion that we can use them as devices to record achievement, to do assignments, to inform that side of the learning, I think is really interesting, and especially outside of the classroom. Yesterday here at TES we launched a huge history lesson with the British Museum, and we're encouraging history learning through objects. So the notion that you might go off to a museum, find really inspiring objects, I don't know, Guy Fawkes's lantern is in the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, and look at the lantern, see what learning you can get from looking at it, then see what research you can do online about it, then put together a film and upload it to YouTube or upload it to the TES site, and then maybe win an extraordinary behind-the-scenes tour of the British Museum. That's a great place to start.
Oh yeah, definitely. You can enter that. I think it's at tes.com/huge history lesson.
That's right. That's a subtle plug, isn't it?
Was that subtle? It wasn't subtle, viewers. My apologies for that. Jim, thank you so much for kind of taking the time out of your day to join us.
Pleasure.
And hopefully we'll be reading more of you soon on tes.com.
Yeah, well, Ed Dorrell will be nagging me very soon to find out what I'm going to write about this week, so I better put my thinking cap on.
So you'll be back on there soon. But in the meantime, we can follow you on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
Jim P. Knight, P for Philip, if you're interested.
Excellent. And if you're out and about in Weymouth,
yeah, you might bump into me at the supermarket. You never know your luck.
Thank you very much, Lord Jim Knight. Thank you.
Thank you.